Clay, if Discovery does one thing right, it's most true to form in its Star Trek heritage and goals. It made a unsatisfactory shift to a new version of a starship in the same registry line. I'm always a bit let down by every single starship that blows up in this series. I think the best one is Search for Spock is the best version of that possible. It is Search for Spock where the Enterprise blows up, I think, right? Yeah, because it's not Voyage Home. The Enterprise in Generations, I feel, is like really lackluster. The way that ship goes down, I feel the Defiant in DS9 is not very good. Discovery doesn't get destroyed, but it gets updated enough where it's a new version. It's version 2.0, and they give it a little A at the end of its registry number. So it's the new Discovery. As far as I can tell, its nacelles are detached, and it doesn't have little spokes on its wheel saucer anymore. The spokes are gone. It's just it's just a hollow space in there, and it looks a little bit more armored. But I don't know.
Yeah,
you can either go ahead.
It's got that 90s holofoil.
Yeah,
comic book cover texture.
Or trading cards too. Where you can get the trading cards in that cover.
I actually didn't realize they put an A on it, and I'm a little disappointed that they did because I don't know. I feel like the A is reserved for massive destruction, but I guess the Enterprise A was just a retrofit. It wasn't. They hadn't blown up the original ship when they did that. So
yeah, that's true. I'm showing my. It's been so long. When did they change it to an A in the movies after the motion picture?
Movie. Yeah, the first movie it was an A.
Oh, there goes me. But I guess it doesn't have to be destroyed. It can just be retrofit enough, and this one certainly would be the case because now we're 32 years. We're in the 32nd century, and everything is super advanced. All your technology rolls into one device.
I'm sorry, because the one that we haven't seen is the C, right?
Yeah. Well, you see the C in yesterday's Enterprise.
Okay, you see the C in yesterday's Enterprise, so that means the B is. You don't see the
B. You don't.
No, you do.
Oh, and yes, in Generations.
At the beginning of Generations is the B. So does that mean that A? Are they on? They're on the Enterprise in Star Trek 5,
I don't think it gets an A until they blow up the Enterprise in Search for Spock.
Yeah.
And then the next one is the Enterprise A for a couple movies.
That makes more sense. Which sticks with my line of reasoning even better, which is you don't get the A until you get blown up.
Right. It has to be a new ship. I had also thought that. I'm glad we sorted it out. Hopefully people are okay with our information, and damned if it's right and damned if it's wrong. Let's talk about Scavengers. We'll take a break. We'll play a clip from the episode. We'll come back and break it down.
I was hoping against all logic you could explain her absence.
Sorry, no. Came into my room and Grudge was there, and Tricia has a reason for keeping us both in the dark.
Commander Burnham left to pursue a mission of her own against my direct orders.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
My sentiments exactly.
Scavengers is the 6th episode of the 3rd season of Star Trek Discovery. It first aired on November 19th, 2020. Written by Ann Kofel-Saunders, directed by Douglas Arniakowski. In-universe date is 3189. In this episode, after receiving a message from Book, Burnham and Georgiou embark on a rogue mission to find him, leaving Saru to pick up the pieces with Admiral Vance. Meanwhile, Stamets forms an unexpected bond with Adira. I was thinking about this. Discovery to me is the love songs, like, of Star Trek, where there's a lot of love songs. There's a lot of songs been written about love over the course of the past many centuries.
Most songs, I would argue.
Yeah, and they encompass a lot. There's like breakup songs I consider love songs, and there's just straight love songs where you're declaring your love. There's let's get married songs.
Torch songs.
Yep. It's how all crimes are hate crimes technically, and so there's no reason to really distinguish them. It's all songs are love songs because you're usually doing some variants of something you love. Discovery is the love songs of Star Trek, in that I find there's a big distinction to me between love songs that I find relatable and accurate, and love songs that are written clearly with no respect to what love actually is as an emotion. I'm gonna put any Coldplay song is a fake love song to me because it writes about love. What's that?
You prefer the love songs that are about sharing bank accounts.
That's right. I prefer the nuts and bolts about like, we're going to have 3 accounts. One is your checking, one is mine, and then one's a shared account. Coldplay is fake love songs. Songs like Yellow. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't say anything, but it sounds like a love song.
Sure.
Songs like This Must Be the Place by Talking Heads, I find to be authentic love songs, in that they are not schmaltzy and not, they're strange in a way. Like there's a strangeness to love that's very hard to encapsulate in a song. And when you start getting overly dramatic in your songs and your love songs, it comes across to me as very fake. And it's not the way that love is actually represented or felt by anybody. It's kind of a romantic conception of what love is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. I feel Discovery is that, and Discovery is just leaning towards the schmaltzy, this is what love is. These characters are feeling love. This is love, and everyone should recognize it as for what it is. But it doesn't have any of the love song aspects that I like, which is a kind of weirdness, in the Talking Heads, just sharing the same space kind of thing. There's no like interesting aspect to the love that's going on. It's just love. That's it. All I could think about was Discovery is my least favorite version of love songs is what Star Trek Discovery is.
Well, I, for one, want to know what love is and want you to tell me.
I have to get hold on. I got to get a busload full of black choir to come in and sing background while I explain this.
Please. I would love that if I had that backing for everything I say.
I want to know what love is.
Swaying in the background.
I think the singer's looking through like Venetian blinds at the start of that music video.
Or Is This Love by Whitesnake, where it's just him walking in the rain, pondering.
Mm-hmm. Give her inches, feed her well.
I'm not totally sure if you can't tell, I'm not totally sure where to jump off from there. But I think I know what you're talking about. My thing with this show is I feel like they're doing half of it right, and half of it they're just kind of spinning their wheels for reasons that I can't totally understand. And to kind of go back on things that, not go back, because I think I can explain myself, but I don't think that they've quite figured out how to reconcile themselves with a episodic and long-form story structure.
Yeah.
Because we're 6 episodes in out of a 13-episode season, and there's not really a plot, an overarching plot happening. There's a lot of stuff happening off screen, I guess.
No forward momentum to the story.
Yeah,
really.
No forward momentum to the story. And the stories that they are telling, at least in this episode, feel fairly, I don't know, rote, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's because I loved the Starfleet stuff. I thought the Starfleet stuff was great. I liked everything with Saru. I thought was good. I thought the Saru and Tilly scene was really good. And I like the scene at the end where Burnham actually has to face consequences for what she's doing, and it comes from Saru, which I thought was really good. But I don't know, the side quest to go rescue Book from the planet of the beginning of The Running Man, just I don't know.
What set design on that place though? Like, honestly, like it looks fantastic. It's a little generic, but it looks fantastic in terms of how well done it is and everything like that. But honestly, the worst part about that, it was Georgiou up to 11 for 25 minutes, and it's like, oh my god, this is awful.
Well, honestly, I didn't mind a lot of it. I think because it actually gave her something to do.
Yeah, she has a task.
Just standing around on the ship and just being snarky at people.
And she gets to walk around in a dump and be snarky to people.
Yes. The thing that was killing me though was the end of this, and it's like you're on this salvage planet where it's run by this person who they name drop 15 times, but you never see.
They've name dropped that person before in previous episodes too.
Okay, so obviously she's going to show up at some point. But they present this, their set design is actually undercutting the actual like production value of the show. I don't know if production value is the right word, but the amount of money they have to spend on like people, because you end up in a situation like we were in that episode of Enterprise where they have to break out of the prison. They have to break the people out of the prison, and it's like we have this massive prison camp with all these people that we have to break out, but there's only like 8 guards. And once you get past those 8 guards and the first wall, you're home free, no problem. And in this one, they shut down this entire slave operation and are only confronted by 8 guys who they very easily destroy. And then they just fly out and just blow everything up. And there's no pushback. Like it doesn't feel like they're actually escaping a realistic
alliance, a force that is competing with the Federation at this point, this Orion-Andorian alliance between the two of them. Yeah,
it just feels like 5 guys. You're doing a scene with 5 people in this massive set, and the amount of people that you have to do the scene doesn't support the set that you're trying to pass off.
Yeah. You think being as valuable a place,
it was a pretty stock story.
Yeah, it is. On top of that, it's just apparently the place is valuable to the Orion-Andorians. They're stripping all the ships of their stuff and selling it, I guess, which is profitable enough. And it's understaffed, so they rely on bombs implanted in people's heads to stop them from escaping and all that stuff. We'll probably get into. I mean, it's as good a place as any to start. I guess you have to start at the start. So, Burnham. What's the best way to encompass all of this? So to go back to your lack of like serialized strength combined with episodic stuff. I completely agree. We've talked about this before, that they're fairly bad at doing this. And then I think the way that it's bad to me is that their episodic standalone storylines feel like they have gravitas to the point where they're going to continue later on down the season. So you have these strange stories that are very small, and the smallness of them almost makes you think that something here is being built that they're going to extrapolate on later. I think of the Adira and Stamets storyline here, where you think that it's such an introductory level story that you expect that this is going to come back, but I would bet that this never comes back again. I would bet that they hardly ever talk to each other going forward, and you're going to wonder sort of what the point of it is. I guess what I'm saying is that their episodic standalone stories are not full enough to be constrained to one episode. It feels like it's only hinting at things, but it's not. And so what they have to do is, like the Stamets and Adira, the writers just go, these 2 characters have the same thing in common. They'll have a story with each other. I don't even know what you really learn about this, besides the fact that they have both dealt with death and not death at the same time. So they bond over that. But there's nothing else to that story. There's nothing else propelling that. There's nothing else going on, and I don't even really relate to it.
Can you imagine how if Adira wasn't a Trill, and was just someone who was missing their loved one who had died, could you imagine how insane that conversation would sound if they're sitting at dinner or whatever, and Stamets is like, I understand it. You lost someone who you loved, and that happened to me as well. And I had a very finite understanding of what life and death was until I realized that death is very fluid, and there is a possibility that I could bring that person back to life from death. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Have they even talked about the fact that Culber was a mushroom man for a little bit of time? Like, it's a big thing. There's a big thing to drop on her.
They really gloss over that whole thing, where it's talking about, it's like,
did Culber even die? I was sitting there going, would I consider Culber dead at this point? Like, it doesn't feel like he died. It feels like he went missing for a couple weeks and then he came back and was.
The treatment of that in the show reminds me of Creed, the movie Creed, where you're watching
the rock
band. I wish. Where you're watching this like really down to earth movie about Apollo Creed's son coming to visit Rocky Balboa and trying to deal with the fact that his father died and all this kind of stuff. And they really kind of gloss over, at least for the first one, the fact that Apollo Creed, this guy's father, was killed by a Russian super soldier boxer that Rocky himself then had to go to Russia to defeat and destroy communism. So it's like this super superhero, extraordinary element of the story that is just kind of brushed to the side so they could deal with the more human aspect of it, which, whatever, it's fine. But it's just, I always find it funny when you kind of take a step back and realize the human down to earth story they're telling inside of the crazy shit that has happened before it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel it's different from previous Star Treks somehow for that?
Not really, actually, because I feel like in other Star Treks you would have the same level of conversation about it, but it seems more like if this was on TNG, I could imagine them having this conversation where Riker is talking to someone whose brother died, and he's like, I had a kind of a brother who died once too, and like kind of make reference to it, but you're like, oh yeah, Tom Riker, blah 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 blah. But since this show, everything's connected, the fact that it's more serialized makes it that much of a bigger deal. Because the first thing I was thinking in that scene was, is he going to try to bring Adira's boyfriend back from the dead?
Right.
Like, is that the end game here? Like, I don't know what else they do other than that.
Right. He's like, we've both dealt with life and love and death, except my guy came back. Maybe we can bring your guy back too, because it might work for us.
It's like having that conversation with Dr. Frankenstein. He's like, well, there is something we can do about this if you really want to try. It's like,
yeah. No, I think it's just Adira adjusted the Spore Drive, which her feeling that it's okay for her to just tinker on the most important bit of technology that they have in this galaxy with no permission, and Stamets doesn't react at all to it. He's just like, oh, fantastic, you tinkered with the Spore Drive.
That there are no schematic records of because it's been wiped from existence.
It's just 16-year-old is just going to hit it with a hammer. It's just the Seinfeld story of the old man.
I do want to jump back to the retrofit thing for a second, because I do have a problem with the retrofitting of the ship. Retrofitting the ship, updating all the technology, giving them new comm badges and stuff. I don't know. Part of the charm of sending Discovery into the future and having this one element of it that is so much more advanced even than the stuff that they're using in the future. I feel like you kind of isn't this undercutting everything you did in the last episode where they're like, only we can fly this ship because only we know how to handle everything. Well, you just sent a bunch of guys in there to retool everything and update all the technology, and now everybody's just fine with it.
Yep. I think on a thematic level, it undercuts the we're bringing the Federation back argument that they were supposed to be having, which is that's most strongly represented by having a ship of that era that's supposed to have those values or those sort of like beliefs and things, and then bringing it into the future. I don't understand what the point is besides, just it's something new to do. The ship has detached nacelles now, which they, it's one of those, I don't need an explanation though. Like, it makes it more maneuverable. It's like, God, how the fuck, who cares? It's like,
it makes it more maneuverable. You realize the chief movement of this ship is it spins in a circle.
Well, right? And it just in the first season when they fought the Klingons, they did it by it would jump, to different places every second and fire from a different position. It's like the thing doesn't need to be more maneuverable. It's perfectly maneuverable. I don't know.
I think the summation of these changes and what bothers me about them is encapsulated in the new comm badge. I think the new comm badge is a very Discovery comm badge in that it feels like the Klingon flag bearer suit of comm badges.
The flame bearer,
Yeah. If you look at the badge up close, it's really nice looking. It's got, the two different tone thing, and it's a nice looking badge. But on television, it looks like about 1.5 inches high. And it's just an oval, and you're not close enough to appreciate the symbol or anything. Like, if you go back and you look at any other comm badge from the history of the series, the delta is the focal point.
Yeah.
And it stands out. Like, having that triangle on your chest says Star Trek. Yeah. Having that oval on your chest that you can't really tell that there's I don't know. It just feels like it's over designed, and it looks nice when you get up close to it, but when you insert it in the body of the show, you go, ugh, nah, this doesn't really work for me.
What do you think of it
I'll still probably buy it though, because I'm a computer.
What do you think of it in terms of tech for the story for them to have? I think it's
sorry, go ahead.
It's it makes sense. It's the same thing I feel about the nacelles. Really, it's like it's an update that I can understand, but on some level, it feels more like it's a strangely divorced from the narrative technical update that isn't really all that important to anything. So,
right.
Like, you know, how they say that they can call up their schematics or whatever off of it so that whenever they're typing on something, they can just be wherever they want and the little computer thing pops up in front of them and then they can type on it. It just doesn't do anything to change the series. You know, it's like, when they start doing that, am I going to be like, what? Where the fuck did this come from? Like, how the hell are they ever going to? I'm kind of just going along with it. And the only other thing that I think is kind of interesting is that it's got a personal transporter in it, which they use for a fairly effective joke here, which is just Linus keeps beaming into places. But
yeah, that was pretty good.
You know, and so it just feels not even James Bondy in the sense like I would have expected a Discovery episode to be Michael Burnham, here's your new communicator, and the episode revolves around her using the new communicator in all the different ways that it actually functions and gets something out of it. But here it's a scene spent on the crew sort of fan servicey-ly geeking out on this new technology, and then minor gags that are built around what this thing can do now instead of Discovery adapting to what new technology is. They just get new tech and they're just like, yeah, we're totally cool with it. And the person installing it has a line about like, well, the Mavis Beacon software is so advanced that you'll get used to it the longer that you work with it. And they go, that's fantastic. That's great.
Much more advanced than the Mavis Staples version.
ASDFJKL semi.
I do think it's another version of what we've talked about in the past with what they do with character stuff, isn't it? Where it's like they give the character a flaw or an element that traditionally is the crux of what that character does moving forward, and then they just resolve it.
Yeah.
So in this case, you send the Discovery to the future. It's all old technology that only they can work, which becomes a story point for one episode, and then after that they just solve it, and now it's all future tech. And the only thing I can see coming from it is Tilly seems to know her way around it very quickly.
Yeah.
So
seemed very confident in this, confident and capable in this episode. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that plays into maybe she becomes, this would be quite a jump for her, but not for the show, that she ends up being the new number one.
I know, but everyone, this is just like a 90210 dating scenario. It's like everyone's going to get a shot at being number one for a little bit to see who works out. Burnham, you know, it goes into the Burnham had a shot and now failed. It's just the rapidity of which things change. You don't. In 2 episodes from now, I'm not going to remember that Burnham was ever number one. You know, it's like it's such a minor thing that he's like, you now have to serve on the science officer, and you're not my number one, which makes the tears feel fraudulent because he just gave her the position 7 minutes ago in terms of this story. So
and nothing changed for her.
No.
Like there's no.
They didn't even have a scene together where they're like, he's like, what do you think, number one? She didn't have time to do that. Just fades off.
Nothing changes for her. Her the way she acts is not in at least up to this point. I mean, unless that's part of the point, is that she didn't change the way she acted, so she got demoted. Does that change the way she acts going forward? My money's on no.
But why is that? I hate Burnham the way that she's written. I don't understand Burnham because, and the show does not seem to accept her either, because the start of this is like she goes back to her pilot ways, right? She's like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do what I want to do. Fuck you, Saru. I'm going to go off and do this. Saru has to take the blame for her essentially by dealing with Vance, and admits that like he's like, I couldn't control the officer, and he gets reprimanded for it. Burnham comes back, and when Admiral Vance is talking to them, he's like, Michael Burnham, you betrayed your orders. It's bad on you. Then he turns to Saru and says, Saru, didn't you realize that this is Michael Burnham and she told you something and you didn't tell me about it? It's like, why the fuck would Saru tell you? Like, there's no reason outside of this character in the show being like, Michael Burnham is always right, that Saru is at fault in any way for what he did here. There's no reason for him to go to there and talk about it. She's saving one guy, and he's like, we have to be able to jump to save a planet full of people. What are you talking about? Why didn't Saru tell you? Why would Saru tell you that? It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I found that scene. Excuse me. I found that scene very confusing because the tone versus what he was actually saying, I found very incongruous. Because he's doing the angry police captain thing, reprimanding Crockett and Tubbs, but he's also going like, "Thank you for doing what you did. If anybody else had done that, I would have given them a standing ovation. But, you went against your orders. But that being said, the thing that you did was actually really good, and it actually helped us out quite a bit." What's going on? I don't understand. Yeah. Like, you're talking about the fact that the Federation can't focus on the burn, but you're also saying she did a great job, and you're also reprimanding her. And like, I'm kind of lost as to, like,
is Burnham to blame? Is Burnham to blame? Did Burnham do the wrong thing in this show? In my opinion, she did the wrong thing professionally, but not personally. But the show is like, she did both professionally and personally the right thing to do, because Starfleet rewards her at the end and she saves Book. But she left an entire planet, or whatever the fuck they're defending, without her serving as the number 2 in that chain of command there. Yeah. And she fucked off to save the guy that she's apparently been sleeping with, I have to assume at this point. Like, there's I don't. Well,
that's another conversation we can have in a bit. But yeah, go continue.
So she goes off and saves Book, and you can say Burnham saving Book at that point works on a personal level. I can understand her going off and be like, "I'm going to save the guy that I'm in love with, and I'm sorry, but I have to abandon my post." I say that's fine. The only way to pay that off is that Vance doesn't respect it as a Starfleet decision, because it's not respectable in terms of like a military decision that she would just fuck off like that and go do whatever she wanted to do. But Vance at the end yells at Saru, "You should have told me that Michael Burnham told you this was going on, because even though it makes no fucking sense whatsoever, it was the right thing to do. And therefore you were wrong for not telling me the thing that in retrospect turned out to be the right thing to do through various plot machinations."
Yeah, it's kind of the Star Trek version of in like cartoons where one character does something wrong and then the other one tells on him, and then the one who did the thing wrong gets punished, and then the other person also gets punished for snitching.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. Yeah, I found it very it was one of those things where it's the emotion of the scene versus what's actually happening wasn't super didn't line up, because if you took out English and just had them speaking gibberish, I think the scene actually works better. Mm-hmm. Because the intensity of Vance is clear.
The tears on the faces of Saru and Burnham is clear that something has happened. Yeah.
And so it's like, if all you're hearing is gibberish and seeing their emotional reactions, like, okay, Vance is mad at them, then he leaves, and then Saru is mad at her, and clearly she gets demoted or something.
Yeah.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, it was kind of for a show that it's sort, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just the emotionality of it is so intense that the specifics of what being said got a little bit muddy, I think.
Yeah. I just think honestly just think it comes back to the show believes that Burnham's a hero, and I don't understand why the show thinks that at all. Within the constraints of what the show is, which is a semi-militaristic outlook on stuff, where every other prior series has had importance on chain of command, and that there's a reason, like betraying your commanding officer and doing something is a punishment in other series, and it's a punishment within the context of what this organization is supposed to be. They haven't moved past the hierarchy of command structure. There's still admirals and there's still captains and everything like that. It's not like they're in some sort of utopian, everyone is equal and we all kind of like do whatever we want to do while working as a group. There's still a structure to it. And I just find Burnham's decision at the start is unthinkable to me for a combination of, well, it's kind of like a lot of things in this episode in particular. I understand the decision that is ultimately made, but there's no groundwork that makes me feel like any of that is reasonable that they make that decision. So if we had spent a season with Book and I was like, oh, yeah, Burnham and Book really like each other, totally makes sense that Burnham would abandon Starfleet to go after Book. They've been together for about 5 minutes over the course of the series. And so I don't buy that she would go off and do that. I don't buy the Georgiou relationship. I hate Georgiou and Burnham talking to each other. I really wish they would not talk to each other whatsoever. And then at the end, it's the decision of Stamets and Adira getting to work on the Spore Drive and all this stuff. It all just piles into this. I don't find any of this grounded and any of this built up to the point where I'm supposed to feel bad for anybody.
Yeah, they're incredibly lucky that Book and Burnham have incredible chemistry together, because that's the only thing carrying anything the two of them are doing. Because you get, in this episode, you get this, you were saying that they're apparently sleeping together. I don't think they were. I think what they're doing is trying to do they're basically off-screen Sam and Dianing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where it's, they are kind of doing the will they, won't they, but we didn't see any of it. We're just coming in at the last episode of the season when they finally get together.
Yeah.
And so the only thing carrying this relationship where they're kissing in the turbo lift is the fact that the chemistry between them is very, very good. There is no, like you said, we've seen the two of them on screen together for maybe a combined, well, if minus the first episode where it's just them. Since then, they've been on screen together for combined maybe 10 minutes.
Yep.
And it's just difficult to really care or buy into that sort of, oh, they're finally making out now after a year of not doing that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how I don't even know what their relationship has really become.
Yeah.
So it's
well, it's
tough
the show.
Really...
It's the show skipping. It's been a constant theme of Discovery. They skipped the time that Burnham spent in the future without Discovery. They just skipped over. They glossed over it. But all of the decisions being made by the characters are built off of that time period. So if you don't see the time period, any decision she makes from there just seems insane, because you haven't spent any time in. They could have had a Book and her could have had the most passionate blue ball relationship imaginable, and this would make more sense that she would go after him. But it's instead, the only time we see him is when they meet and they're not friendly with each other. And then the one episode where she walks out with long hair, she's like, Book, great working with you, buddy. He's like, right back at you, Michael. And then they walk to the cafeteria or whatever.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. It's Discovery always skips the building action of the plot, and it jumps to the end of it, and it's like, just buy into it. Just buy into that. This is where this relationship is. How else are these people supposed to feel about each other except after 9 months? They must be in love. They must be. There's no other way that this could possibly go.
I feel like I've said something like this before, but the Discovery style of storytelling is like someone else telling you about what happened. So like if I went to see a movie and I was hanging out with somebody afterwards and they hadn't seen the movie and they asked me what happened, and this was the movie, and I would say, oh, so there's these two characters, Book and Burnham. They were together for a year. She was lost in the future. They were together. He was the only person they had time to spend time with. And they work together for a year, and then he gets separated and she has to go save him. And when she saves him, they finally make out. And the person listening goes like, oh, that sounds great. It's the same thing where it's like on this show, they're just kind of telling you what happened before, and they only show you the payoff.
Right.
And it's like across the board with this show is that's what they do. They don't like
most of the narrative is assumed, really. It's most of the narrative is you can connect to the dots, and there's nothing illogical about the way that it works, but they skip over the connective tissue that makes the ending be sensible to somebody. Like your plot explanation, it logically lays out. That makes sense as a narrative. It's just at the end of your telling the person about the movie, be like, but the actual movie is just the last two sentences I said to you. Like I assume that I walked in 45 minutes late to the movie. I'm assuming that's what happened in the first half of the movie,
Yeah. It's very odd. I don't know if it's a symptom of trying to do too much or having too many characters to bounce back and forth between or what, but it's like I feel like you got two shows going this season fighting for screen time. one of them is better than the other one. I think the Star Trek show is better than
it's better than Burnham's. Yeah,
but again, could you imagine if Book was like Ash Tyler?
I know, right?
Like the only reason this comes close to working is because those two are so good together on screen.
Yeah. I like the actor. He's very good.
Yeah,
he's easily charming. I do want to just talk a bit about Georgiou and like I building off of last episode, they're definitely trying to jam a story into her and just be like, you must have something to do. She's crying about her son bleeding or something. Her son dies.
Did she say that? Because I thought that was really...
I think she says son. I'm pretty sure that's what she says.
When they do that weird flashback and she's like, son, I'm like, okay, thank you for telling me.
They can't say a name, right? It's a no. The dying parent who goes, son.
Son.
It's not a name. It's just, we have to let the audience know this is a family member that she's crying about.
Why isn't it I mean, obviously we don't know enough about the story, but isn't Burnham dead in that universe?
Yes.
I'm surprised they didn't just use Burnham, but I'm sure it's...
Maybe,
I'm sure her son dying will somehow be used to humanize her and make her less of a space Hitler, but...
I really dislike the dialogue between Georgiou and Burnham when they're going off. It is uncomfortably casual. Well, Georgiou herself is making fun of Tyler. She's like, remember that guy Ash Tyler used to date? That was crazy. And Jim's like, oh, what are we going to do about that? Mm-hmm. I don't like the tone between the two of them. I don't really understand the basis of their relationship. I think that Georgiou's freak out here, the one moment of this episode that really I thought was good, and of course they undershoot it immediately, is when they're trying to shut off the fence to let everybody out. Georgiou has one of her seizure moments and can't act, and it's like, oh, some actual drama. But then she just wakes up and hits the button anyway, So it's like there's a better written show. That's a cliche scene of Georgiou having that seizure stops the rescue attempt from happening. And then It's like, then they're in prison and Burnham's like, what the hell happened back there? And she's like, it's been happening for 3 months. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. But it's this instant drama that's instantly remedied. It's just like, here's a dramatic beat and we'll just fix it. She wakes up and she pushes the button. Right. I don't have much else to say about Georgiou. Georgiou is one of the worst characters I've ever seen in television, I think. It's like, she's awful. She has there's nothing to her. And performance is bad. The character is bad. When she's interacting with the Orion guy, it's like the worst hacky dialogue I've ever heard in my life, where she's like, maybe I'll chop your head off next time I'm here. And he's like, I'd like to see you try to chop my head off. And it's like, what the fuck are we talking about?
I'll do it. I'll chop your head off.
I will do it. And Burnham's like, I've seen her chop her head off. I've seen it happen. It's just so stupid.
She'll do it. She's not kidding. She will do it.
Hey, do you have any thoughts about Georgiou, Burnham, anything like that? I feel disjointed talking about this episode. I didn't like this episode, but I also don't. I think that this one was a reversion from where I liked the past couple episodes and the changes they were making, but by sidelining Vance and the Federation, it seems like a lot of my goodwill is bundled up into those guys in that group, and I don't know. Whatever you think.
Yeah. As far as Georgiou goes, I think I've kind of figured out what it is about her that really annoys me. We've talked about her performance, and it's not her performance, but the dialogue being written for her doesn't really work. And I think I figured out what it is, because I think Vance has elements of it too. And this is going to make me sound like an old man, but I think the dialogue, at least for those two, is just too contemporary sounding. And I think that ends up undermining the character in a weird way. Like during that argument at the end with Vance and...
would you say contemporary or casual? I would say that she talks too casually.
I think it's one and the same. It's okay. Like modern 2020 type dialogue. And that's what kind of takes me out of it. In the scene with Vance at the end, when he's reprimanding Burnham, he says... for a hot second, it looked like we were going to have to, and I was like, is that what he said? What?
Yeah.
That's not something an admiral at Starfleet would say in the 31st century or something, you know?
Yeah.
It's like I'm not looking for like Thor dialogue where everything is a thou and they.
Yeah, Shakespearean level dialogue, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like there's some modern colloquialisms that make their way into the dialogue that I think work better with characters like Tilly or even Burnham. But you've got other characters who are all written kind of the same way. And so you've got Georgiou kind of speaking the sassy modern dialogue the same way that Tilly and even like Stamets do. And it just doesn't sit because doesn't really fit for her character, you know?
I'll meet you halfway on that. I would agree and modulate, but just say I think that she sounds too casual with them, and contemporary is kind of the same thing, but they don't have a. There is not a.
It's like if Riker came in and was like, I saw your report, Geordi, and the only thing I can say about it is where's the beef? You know, it just doesn't fit.
I would agree. I think there's a lack of rigidity to their roles where the admiral should be speaking kind of a certain way, and I definitely prefer Vance's performance and writing over Georgiou's. I think that he at least feels semi like he's supposed to be. I think that Michelle Yeoh is not intimidating enough for the role of Georgiou. I think if Georgiou was delivering these lines in a more solemn kind of like quiet evilness, it's better. But she's practically like cackling as she says. She's like, "Ha! I would like to see that happen." And it's like, what the fuck? This is awful. And the way that they play her as a badass is that she can take extreme amounts of punishment and not go down from it, you know. But if she was a brooding, quiet, like creepily scary person where it wasn't so clownish and in your face all the time, I think it's a better portrayal that way, where there's not this kind of court jester, jokester thing going on with her. It's like the conversations with Burnham, even if Georgiou was portrayed as more of disturbed, like more like there's something like unhinged about this person. She's not played that way. She's just played as a Bond villain who's like, I bet you will, Mr. Bond. Why don't you if she got tied down to a table with a laser between her legs, she would be the one that's just like yelling at the Orion and insulting him as it's happening, you know, and I don't think that works.
I guess to be fair though, she is from the mirror universe, and the mirror universe's hallmark is overacting, and
that's true. She should swing in on a chandelier.
Like you're telling me that mirror universe Kira wouldn't act the exact same way?
That's true, but it's at least in those series, the mirror universes were consistent. Like the mirror universes were sort of corny goofball areas to go into. I don't think in TOS it was really that way. TOS was trying to play it as more of like, hey, this is a dictatorship that's gone wrong. The goatee and the facial hair has taken another life outside of that. But here, like, I feel like Georgiou was more effective in her mirror universe. But when they plucked her out of it, I don't even really remember, but this is like my mind's eye. When they plucked her out of it and she became this sort of freewheeling, let me stand at comms and crack a few jokes and have dinner with all of you, you really lose track of what that character is supposed to be. And she's just not threatening enough.
I don't think they're going to do this because they seem to be working towards like evening her out, but this season feels like there should be a subplot where Georgiou appears to betray everybody. Like whatever, when it comes down to finally meeting up with the Orion Andorian Syndicate and what the hell's the Queen lady's name? I can't remember what it is.
Sissius or something. It begins with a S or C, I think. I can't remember what her name is.
Whatever it is. When they meet up with the leader of that group, it feels like Georgiou should be like, yeah, I can give you everything you want. Just let me join your group or something like that. Because otherwise, what's the point of having her unless you're going to do a turn like that?
Right.
Because that's I generally like characters in that vein. I think they're always a good, when you've got a group of people who are all focused on one singular like goodness, throwing in a character whose ambiguity is always in play only generally makes for a better story. But that's only if you use it. Like having a character who you never know what they're going to do, what side they're going to fall on, even if they ultimately always fall on the good guy's side, is really fun. I refer to this only because it's the first time I ever encountered it, but on Beast Wars, the Transformers show, there was the character of Dinobot, who was a Decepticon, who ends up getting kicked out or something and ends up coming over to the Autobot side and joining their group. But he's a bad guy. So every time they do something, they're always like, watch this guy. We don't know what he's going to do. Right. And they ultimately always have a story where it looks like he's going to do something bad, but then he ends up, proving that he's on the good guy's side. And if you're not going to do that with that character, I don't know why you have it.
Yeah. The character's name is Osira, too.
Osira. I knew Osira. It was some sort of like lopped off, not Osiris, it's Osira.
Right, it's just a little bit shortened. Yeah. People were confusing. The first time she was mentioned, I think they were saying they thought it was Cyrus, who I think is the cowboy guy in the second episode, the villain of the second episode with the shotgun. But it's not him.
I completely forgot about the black box thing. I didn't realize that was something that had come up before. So when they were talking about that as the motivation for this whole plot, I was like, black box? You're just pulling another thing out of thin air that we don't have any connection to motivate your movement, motivate your story here. And it's like this key to the larger story that you're just talking about now, but I guess they had talked about it previously.
Yeah, if I'm remembering it correctly, she, in the second or whatever episode where she's explaining what she's been doing for the past year, she meets an Andorian who gives her one of those. So I think she's been trading and collecting them. They're being used to tell that the ships did not all explode at the same point. It was apparently a beacon that she can triangulate, and they'll figure out where this signal origin started.
Sure. Is there, I don't know if we've already talked about this. Forgive me if we have. Is there any answer to this mystery that is going to be in any way satisfying?
No. It's more interesting to me if it is a natural event, honestly. If it was just a strange, the universe took a step and we all got stuck behind, but it looks like it's going to be Burnham's great granddaughter who's been, sitting on this planet where she pushes a button and blows up all the ships or something like that. There's no possible good outcome, in my opinion. If there is, we'll see, but I doubt that I'm going to be amazed by it.
The only thing that would make me clap, only because I don't know. I'm always such a sucker for this. It's an easy win for me. Was if they follow the beacon back to where the signal came from and it's a Borg cube or something. Yeah. Nice. Something like that where it's like, okay, you got me.
They got us eventually.
Yeah. I'm here for future Borg. Let's see what that looks like.
Last point about
future Borg is like, I'm going to send this element of myself that I refer to as control back into the past.
Right. To clean up all these messes. The last thing I'll say about Georgiou, very fitting of Discovery, and one of the things I don't like, where on the way back, where Burnham is like, what happened back there? And Georgiou says that happens. Georgiou has a thing where she sits sort of like trembling on the verge of tears, and Burnham says, it's okay to be sad. You're not in the Terran Empire anymore.
Yeah.
It's so terrible.
Why are they friends? I don't understand why they're friends.
No. I mean, I guess Georgiou knew her. I don't know why Burnham is accepting of her, but it's that scene just annoys me because it's again just focusing on this emotion that I don't understand where it's coming from, and it feels like it's just a therapy session where it's like, yeah, it's okay to cry. You can have a cry right here, Georgiou. I know you're a fascist dictator that has slaughtered billions of people, but if you want to have a little cry on this side, if that'll set things straight, that's fine with me.
Hey man, dictators have emotions too.
They do, and they're people too, but I don't feel bad when they cry, I guess. So that's pretty much it for Scavengers, which I thought was a pretty... Scavengers reminds me of Scattershot. I felt it was a Scattershot episode. Not one of my favorites.
I saw this one getting actually quite a bit of good press on Twitter and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm not totally sure why, because I didn't think it was a train wreck, but I also didn't think it was anything special either. I think they've done better episodes this season than this one.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know. I don't know what. I still haven't gotten a good answer about what people. An answer that surprised me about people who think this is good, what they like about it. It's usually a response to me saying I don't like something. They say they do, which is obviously subjective and fine. But I just have a hard time. I don't see the reviews that I see for positive of this feel like they're ignoring the problems. Sort of. It's like a weird endorsement by just being like, well, just ignore everything that's wrong with it and focus on the few things that work, and then it's a good show. And I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that you could say that about any show, I guess.
You can say that about any political candidate. You could say it about any show too. It's just.
Is it succeeding by attrition? Like it's just sticking around long enough that people.
That is what's definitely the people who are still watching it are the people who had not completely given up on it. So you're going to see a skew towards more positive reviews.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Even I feel like and I'm not saying that I should be harsher on this season because I do think it has better elements in this season than it did in previous seasons. But I even feel like my approach has been smoothed out quite a bit to this show. Like watching this episode, I was like, yeah, it's fine. You know, I'm interested in this. They got me with the Starfleet stuff. Can I kind of hand wave the lack of storytelling and the stuff I don't like? I guess so. But that's just me watching it personally. But if I'm going to talk about it and get analytical about it, yeah, there's plenty of stuff that just is not meeting the bar.
I feel this season's weaker than season 2. Honestly, season 2,
I do too. Actually, I think
I felt like the plot that was driving everything was much more focused and obvious as to what it was, and the episodes that sprang up off of the let's find the Red Angel thing felt like a nice way to dip into episode of the week type stories. And while you still had a spine of a story going on in the background, here. I like the spine just seems to be the problems that Discovery and the crew are having in the 32nd century, but it's not focused or coherent enough for me to care about it. They're having, when they have one-off episodes, it's like the dinner party scene where people are fucking freaking out about it, but then they're all fine. The next episode, everyone's just like, yeah, it's just back to work. Everything's cool. We don't have any problems. Detmer, good job flying the ship. I don't tell you enough, Detmer. You do a bang-up job out there flying the ship around, but you're doing a great job. And so because there's no... And the stuff that I thought was going to be seems to be untrue. When we got here, they're like, the Federation doesn't exist. And you're like, the Federation doesn't exist. Second episode, let's go find the Federation. Here it is. Second. And you go, okay. All right. I guess I'm not rebuilding the Federation. I'm not dealing with the trauma of jumping into the future. So what am I dealing with? What's the story that's driving this one? Right.
Yeah. It's a lot of, it does feel like a lot of wheel spinning. And I think that's why part of what they haven't figured out how to handle as far as episodic versus serialized stuff, because you end up kind of going in a circle because you're not really committing to one over the other.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I wonder if this is going to be the case. Season 2, I think, was a better journey with a worse payoff.
Yes. Payoff was bad in season 2.
Yeah, it was terrible. But I'm wondering if this season is going to be, if this is just them like spinning their wheels to get to the good stuff for the last like 3 episodes.
They have a great payoff, but they're not sure how to arrive at an effective way.
We just recorded for Rotten Heart Picture Show a movie called Society, which is not a good. I refer to it as it's not a good movie, but it's a great movie because it's got this final 15 minutes that are just like anything, unlike anything you will ever see in a movie. But to get up to that point, it's a lot of like kind of wheel spinning and just sort of like going through the motions to an extent. And whether or not I'm kind of hoping that's how this season ends up, where it's just like they've got something really great up their sleeve for the last 3 or 4 episodes. I don't think that they do, unfortunately, but yeah, I do think that this season does a few things probably better than season 2. I think they work the crew better in this one, that you kind of get more sense for the crew in this one than you do in the last season stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I think Starfleet in this one is a better secondary character than anything in season than
much
Section 31 or Control was in the second season. There's something you can like rest against there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's take. We don't need to take a break because we don't have that second clip. So there's no ratings, but thank you everybody for listening. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky file. A couple dollars a month gets you extra stuff, extra podcasts. We're covering Inception this month, the number 7 greatest sci-fi film on Rotten Tomatoes. It's the Chris Nolan movie that everyone knows about. And then we're doing a DS9 revisit. You can get access to those and like 75 plus other podcasts that are available on the Patreon feed, patreon.com/thepensky file. And as always, a special thank you to our Captain tier supporters, Christian Pouch, Dark Latif, Chris Tinsley, Mike Burnett, Sean Cardinal of Doomsday, Joint Mango, Matt Cutler, Ben Douglas, Jamie Farr from
MASH?
Yes, from MASH. Samuel Custer, Nick Sturgey.
Finally.
Bradley Kinley. The residuals are starting to pour in. Matthew Ross, Rune Vendler, Nathan Elliott, Eric Johnson, Andrew Charlog, Grim Santo, Poindexter G, Dwayne Hackett, Paul Roscoe, Jordan Cooper, Derek Zajac, Kevin Reyes, Fall 13 Hero, Stefan Minton, Nick the Rat, Darth Mosk, HH28, Matt Curry 6, Jacob 123, Mike Harris, Shaky's Gamer, Patrick Seba, Captain Brazen, Kevin Larry, Eric Sanjuan, Corey Martin, William Scheisler, Zane Majors, Soylent Blue, and Groppler, John Zorn. Thank you very much for supporting the show. And thank you for your residuals from a successful television career.
Those guys are going to be able to find out if we can make any sense of that crazy plot in Inception. What's going on in that movie? It's too hard to understand.
I haven't seen it since it came out. I have not ever rewatched it. So we'll see. We'll see about it. I don't think I haven't. I remember being mildly unimpressed by it, but it's been a very long time, because when did that come out? 2008 probably.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah,
a long time ago. So we'll see. Thank you very much for listening. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go? You have Society coming out at some point. I don't know if it's the next one.
Well, Society actually will be our first episode of 2021. So
okay,
it's quite a ways off. We've got actually, we just had a new badass come out this past week, which was Lion and the Unicorn Showdown, which are 2 interesting episodes of Batman the Animated Series. Next week is It, the 2018 or 2017 It movie for Rotten Horror Picture Show, which should be fun. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. Did you watch the trailer for next week's episode?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they are bringing back, however briefly, the fact that Burnham grew up as a Vulcan. Because there's one shot.
There's a shot of child her, yeah.
Yeah, I assume it's child her. I went back and I paused it, and there were no pointy ears, so I assume it's her.
But she's talking to Romulans, I think, in the episode.
Yeah, but that's like, I assume it's going to be brought up maybe for one scene, and then maybe this one episode and never brought up again. So I still don't think it counts as a character trait.
As much as brushing your teeth is a character trait, it just happens every once in a while.
Right.
Yes, it's called Unification 3. So the Romulans in it makes sense. I would assume, although maybe I'm over assuming, that since the Vulcans and the Romulans share a heritage, that Burnham will be the link that can connect them back to the Federation or something. The implication I got there was that the Romulans joined the Federation, which I think would be something that this show would consider to be a success, I think, which would be like the feather in their caps or something. But we'll see. It'll probably happen in the first 5 minutes, and then something else will happen.
And then you'll find out that the Romulans actually caused everything.
That's right. They don't use dilithium.
Incest Romulans.
That'll be the point to see if the show's not paying attention. That sounds too critical. But every time the Romulans showed up in the old series, it was always a big point that they don't use warp drives. They use something else. So we'll see if the Romulans are the species that are fully at warp speed moving around or whatever.
Like, shouldn't that honestly be what the setup is then? That the Federation has fallen apart and Starfleet's fallen apart because dilithium's blown up, and now the Romulans run everything because the Romulans have superior technology or something?
You would think. We haven't gotten any sense that anyone out there is warping around and that the Federation is behind the 8-ball. You would think that would be the natural source of tension. You know, it's like Federation would just be getting attacked and they can't counter because the ships would just warp away and they're stuck there going, it's like a Zergling rush or something, and then just running off. But
I also, we didn't talk about this, and I know we're running long, but there's a moment at the beginning where Vance says, he's sending out people on their missions and whatnot, and then I think Burnham is like, well, we have this technology, we can do all this stuff in like 5 seconds, and he's like, we need you here just in case we need you to go to this other place. If I was Burnham, I'd be like, yeah, I get it, We can do all of this stuff. We don't have to send people out for 2 months. We can jump and do that thing like in 25 minutes.
Do they not? Isn't that part of Saru's voiceover where he says Discovery and the crew have been doing missions for the past little bit for the Federation?
Oh, I don't remember.
I think he does. I think he implies that time has passed and they have been using the Spore Drive to reach Federation colonies that have not been contacted in a long time.
Mind. You can tell time has passed because of Saru's mustache.
That's right. That's it. Thank you very much. Patreon.com/The Pensky File if you want to support the show. Otherwise, we will be back with Unification Part 3, which is the next Discovery episode. Enterprise continues as usual, and all the other shows, Rotten Horror Picture Show and Badass, are on thepenskyfile.com or YouTube, whichever you prefer. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. Let us know what you thought about this episode down below in the comments or write an email. And otherwise, we'll be back. See ya.